Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. And yes, it's another welcome back after a while. For people who don't know, there's some big issues with getting stuff into the UK at the moment as a result of Diamond US declaring title over bankruptcy. Some stuff's getting delayed, and we're not getting as much as we usually would do. I'm trying my best to get through this, but it's going to be tough for me going forward because there's also looming international trade wars, and prices are going to go up, and we're going to really struggle for a while. So I'll keep reviewing stuff as and when I can, but I hope you all understand that sometimes I might just be like, nah, I'm not going to do this, or there is sometimes, like today, this is literally the only new thing that's left in the store to review, which is Star Wars, Legacy of Vader, Reign of Kylie Ren. And it's like, yeah, I don't usually bother reviewing Star Wars stuff. I definitely didn't bother reviewing the last issue one they did because it was an anthology, and if I get any comments on my videos, it's usually you talk too fast. If I've only got 5 minutes, I'm going to have to talk fast, and honestly, trying to talk about multiple creators doing multiple stories is just not worth the time. This one is just an issue one starting a story, and it is just great to see Charles Soule and Luke Ross, and I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, I could just talk about this. But, can I have to talk about it without talking about just who Kylie Ren is, because he is terrible. Probably the only thing I found interesting about him in the movie, and I kid you not, I've not gone back and watched any of his particular trilogy of movies, like they didn't interest me enough to really care to go back to them, was I kind of liked how his anger was front and center. I thought in terms of how one turns to the dark side, the fundamental building blocks of that, anger is one that we don't see enough. It's there, but it's like restrained and feels like it's more of a tool to be used rather than something which goes out of control, which is how anger works sometimes. And it was nice to see that. But I really didn't care about him. Like, why they felt the need to give him some kind of romantic plot and try to redeem him. And, well, actually, I do get kind of why you redeem bad guys. There is something to be said about this idea that showing that it could happen to any of us, that, like, the motivations for doing it don't have to be huge and apocalyptic. Sometimes just bad things happen and people make terrible choices. But Emo McHigh-Waist Pants was just somebody I did not care about, and the fact that he kept in other movies was frustrating, especially because as time has passed, I've realised Star Trek does much better shared universe stuff, whereas Star Wars idea of shared universe is 24 people on half a dozen planets, and that's it, that's all you really get. So when I got this one, I was like, right, okay, the tricky thing here is going to be writing this character in a way which is authentic to the character, as in a terrible human being, but also writing it in a way which made me want to carry on reading the story. And that was a hell of a challenge. Now, Soule managed at least one of those. I'm going to get that right out of the way. He is terrible in this book. Worst boss ever kind of energy coming off this guy. I think the fact the people who work under him, not work with him, kind of have to just put up with him pretty much admitting how bad he is at his job. Like, having to go to his underlings for help and advice, and then when they give him advice, say, I didn't tell you to do that. I mean, it really leans into not only just how fragile the masculinity is that generates fascism, but also how the people who then become part of it just have to go along with it, like knowing full well how terrible these people are, how dumb they are, and not good at what they do, because they bought into it so much that to turn the back and now be so admit you were an idiot to fall for it in the first place. A very telling message right now, one can't help but feel. Sad to say, the actual story that comes up is leaning into that so much that I find it like very frustrating. He's a man who has inherited so much and been given so much as a result of biological advantage, shall we say, some kind of privilege maybe, and is determined to prove that he can move beyond that by destroying everything that came before to prove that he's his own man. Basically, with all this power and privilege, still playing a victim as if, like, nobody respects him because he didn't do it all on his own, he's got something to prove. I mean, genuinely unpleasant guy. The thing that lifted it, like excessively lifted it though, is Luke Ross's artwork. There's a bit of a struggle when you're doing like people who exist in the real world and you can just look at them and compare, especially because one of them is Adam Driver, who, while not being the most traditionally attractive guy in the world, has a certain something to him. He's very, very watchable and you kind of can't help but want to pay attention to him. And it's hard to get that across when the personality of who he is isn't quite there. He does a really good job, but the thing that Ross does brilliantly is all his fine detail work. His line work as shading is fantastic. His alien creatures are brilliant. His action sequences just flow wonderfully. And sometimes his facial expressions are brilliant. His costume design is immaculate. His use of the world around it is brilliant. And Nolan Woodward on the colours does really good job. Like, it's a proper deep, rich colour palette throughout. There is hardly any lightness to it, which makes sense when dealing with the dark side. All in all, quite a lot I liked about it. I just wish it wasn't about Kylie Ren. but what are you going to do? That's it for me today, and probably for the week, but make sure you do the social media thing. I will come back at some point. I promise I do enjoy doing this. Until I see you all again, look after you, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.